Hey everyone, thank you for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Rijul Gupta, DeepMedia CEO and founder. DeepMedia is a revolutionary AI platform company that is setting the standard for responsible synthetic media use. Rijul, it's so exciting to chat with you and get to know your expertise and your knowledge within this space, because I think a lot of people are hearing so much news about AI coming out. We just heard ChatGPT come out. I've played with the tool and tools alike, like Midjourney, which are building more pictures, and now with media and all these deepfakes. I think there's a lot of questions about AI technology, but I think there's a lot of excitement. And some people are affected by it, some aren't, and it's becoming more and more sophisticated. So it's going to be excited to chat about that. But before we get into all that, what's the most impressive deepfake you've seen with your experience in AI?
Well, the most impressive deepfake I've seen to date was actually just released a week ago.
Yeah.
There was a video of someone who deepfaked his own face against Mark Zuckerberg. The audio and the video sounded great. I think it's that match, which hasn't really been seen until very, very recently, where you can simultaneously synthetically manipulate a face and a voice and put that together. And that is really exciting, but also very frightening to someone like me.
Yeah. How does it impact the audience that's receiving the information in your opinion?
I think it's the combination of having a synthetically manipulated face and voice adds another level of realism and believability that wasn't there before, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the deepfakes that have come out previous to that were very much considered gimmicky, right?
Yeah.
Still not entirely taken seriously either as a threat or an opportunity, because it was clearly fake because the voice didn't match, or that the face wasn't exactly perfect. It wasn't high enough quality. There were these edge cases. But what we've begun seeing for the past couple of weeks, and will continue to see in the first few months of next year, is the combination of face and voice technology getting to a place where all people are watching this and they cannot tell with their eyes and ears what's real and what's fake. And that's, essentially getting us to a place where we become post-truth, post-reality on digital media platforms. And that's one of the reasons why we work so hard on detection AI and detection software, is making sure people are safe from that type of content.
It's incredible, the sophistication that's becoming more and more fine-tuned to be so real. But back to you and your experience with AI. For the audience who doesn't know, describe your relationship with AI and how you got started and what essentially led to the inspiration behind DeepMedia.
Yeah, the company DeepMedia was founded in 2017. It was founded after I saw a deepfake video for the first time. It was one of the old ones where it was Barack Obama and Jordan Peele's face and his voice was being matched perfectly to Obama. And I saw that, and I knew that this technology was going to change the world, that in 5 years from that date, we would see hundreds of thousands of deepfake videos online. There'd be a lot of scams, a lot of fraud that people would need protection from, but also that the opportunity, when used ethically, could be huge. And, now 5 years later, DeepMedia has partnered with the United Nations, the United States DoD. We're in discussions and POCs with some of the world's largest movie studios and YouTubers to make sure that the ethical applications of synthetic media, which in our eyes are universal translation, are advanced, while simultaneously we can make sure that the unethical applications, which are face and voice swap, can be stopped in its tracks.
Yeah. Describe what the technology does, whether you can get as detailed as possible with it or not. But describe how the technology works and how it continues to self-improve, or is there any, limitation to the technology based on the information that it has?
Yeah. So right now, all generative AI is, or at least the vast percentage of generative AI is based on either a transformer model or a generative adversarial network model. And they're both very similar. They have encoder-decoder structures. What that means is that it takes as input either text, face, or voice, can develop an AI that systematically reduces the dimensionality of that data, and can then operate in what's called this latent space, in this low-dimensional space where you can edit parts of a face or a voice just with sliders, right? And then it will decode the edited information, the output looks like a face, it sounds like a voice, it feels and looks very real, but it has been synthetically manipulated.
Yeah.
So that is the underlying AI structure that is used, again, to generate most, if not all, synthetic face, voice, and text manipulations. And then there's also a large amount of post-processing work that goes into making these final outputs look and sound so real. Now, most other corporations do that post-processing work by hand in tools like After Effects and Flame. DeepMedia internalizes that post-production work through more classic computer vision and audio vision processing. So, working in OpenCV, in Pillow, in Librosa, doing the type of lower level, closer to the machine engineering that all of these other platforms are built on top of, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of having to use something like After Effects, well, After Effects just uses classic computer vision that you could do in OpenCV or with raw C. So we do that abstraction layer beneath it, which is much faster. If you do it right, it's much easier, and it is significantly more cost-effective and scalable.
Yeah. Are you working within just detection, or are you also developing media for companies as well?
Yeah. So, generation and detection are two sides of the same coin. Our goal here is to make sure that we have the best detectors in the world that are 6 to 12 months ahead of anyone else trying to generate synthetically manipulated threats, right? Yeah. The only way to do that is to simultaneously pioneer generation. So we have generative networks that can synthesize face and voice in 48 kilohertz in 4K video. The highest quality face and voice manipulation networks to date exist at DeepMedia. And that allows us to build detection software that can detect fake videos the moment they come out. We don't need to train on any videos out there in the public because we have our own algorithms, our own data sets that let us operate at a very high level. Right? Detection is always a cat and mouse game. And the way that we're better than everyone else at detecting and better than the bad actors are at generating is the fact that we do have our generation product, which is the universal translator.
Yeah. And in regards to, when companies are on kind of the innovative forefront, how do you maintain that momentum? It must come at an extreme price in terms of the velocity that you have to go at. And how do you manage that level of speed when honestly there's limitations to any company's ability to kind of have all the information or all the technology at their disposal, because now it's so dispersed and it's so widely available, and people are just getting better and smarter at using technology like this. How do you manage the velocity that you have to move at?
I love that question because I think it very clearly describes what's so unique and different about DeepMedia. So at DeepMedia, our challenge was to figure out an application, a generative application of synthetic media, fake faces and voices, that was ethical, right? Not voice swaps, not face swap, not giving consumers the ability to swap their face with celebrities. None of that really fits our brand. We consider that to be contributing to misinformation. And so after a few years in this space, we came up with AI-enabled localization. What that means is automatically subbing, dubbing, and lip reanimating content in 20 different languages. That product and the development of that product lets us do a couple of things. It lets us raise capital and dedicate resources to generative AI technology, right? Yeah. It allows us to build a product that can scale through product-led growth. When we generate these output videos and deliver them to our customers, they deliver it to end users and other people in the industry who see it. The content we're creating is the advertisement for our service and product in and of itself, right? So basically it sells itself. And then finally, it lets us develop data sets. So when we're working with some of these creators, by perfecting our technology and making it better for the actual end user customer, that allows us to develop the AI in a way that generates profit and revenue from day one. And then that development is simultaneously fed into our detection AI, which means that we are getting better at detecting while generating revenue on the generation side.
Incredible. It's so fascinating. And I guess my follow-up question is, how do you define ethics as a company? And is there some kind of, standard or with like doctors, for instance, or even if you're going through research, there's always a committee that then kind of, challenges your ideas or challenges your methodology, your thinking, to make sure that it's within the bounds that you want to continue and within, things don't get out of control in a way that you control too much of the direction of something. How do you manage ethics in a company that like yours?
It's something that's very important to us to set up properly right now. We're thinking 5 to 10 years down the line when, deep media is the pipe between content creators and content consumers, and we have the ability to completely synthetically manipulate any words or faces in any type of video that we control, right? Mm-hmm. At that moment, it's going to be critical that we would have set up ethical boundaries right now. Essentially, what we're talking about and what synthetic media and deepfakes are is the battle for truth in digital media, right? And so with that in mind, we have set up an AI ethics committee that includes both members of Deep Media and external third-party people who aren't associated with the company to set up these ethical boundaries and to make sure we're doing it correct. That AI ethics committee has come up with 2 ethical pillars that we have set up, written down, defined, and are core to our mission. The first one is about consent, right? I think a big problem comes from people generating synthetically manipulated faces and voices without the consent of that person. Yeah. If that person grants their own consent, then a lot of those issues melt away, right? That's a big one. Making sure people just grant their acceptance for this, right? But then the second one that's equally important to us is about misinformation. When we generate content, we are only doing it with the universal translator. We, just like everyone else in the space, other people are doing face swaps or voice swaps or giving that technology to consumers or enterprises. We can do that. We have that ability to generate these products and deliver them as software or consumer services. But we have specifically not done that because even with the consent of someone who owns that face and voice, that technology can be used to contribute to misinformation, right? Yeah. We will never and have never build products that could ever be used to contribute to misinformation. The only thing that we do is universal translation. We take content in English, generate versions in Spanish that look like that person, that sound like that person, that are fully accurate. But the trick there is they said those words in English. The content, the message, the meaning is accurate. It is not misinformation to translate that meaning in Spanish, Urdu, Arabic, Hindi, French. Sure, they don't speak French, and if you're watching this in France, you might think that you can see Tom Cruise speaking French, right? And I get that might be a little bit of a gray area, but we've decided that was meets our 2 pillars of consent and not contributing to misinformation.
What gets you the most excited about sharing the information across different cultures and being able to communicate the original message? I mean, I hear all the time. I mean, I'm my family is from Mexico, and so Spanish to English is still a little bit of there's a difference when I'm speaking to my grandmother, my abuela, in how things are communicated and can be slightly skew. And same with my partner is speaks Mandarin, and so there's all these different subtleties in languages. How do you what gets you excited for translating the message accurately, and 2, how do you make sure it's accurate with the different subtleties in languages being so I guess obvious?
Yeah. So for that first part, what gets me most excited is the idea that we can create cultural experiences that exist across language barriers, right? Like the internet and digital media was supposed to connect us together, right? Like Facebook and video chats and Twitter, it was supposed to bring the world together, and it didn't do that, right? Like we are still so isolated. Like when I get on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok, I see content that's either produced in the United States or the United Kingdom, and that's it. And the only reason for that is because the content is still within its own language barrier. Yeah. Now, there's been a lot of work in translation over the past 20, 30 years, but all of that translation work was based on text, right? But nowadays, more than ever, people communicate and consume media in video. That is how we talk to each other. That's how we watch movies and TVs, right? Right. And so if we actually want to build a world, a society where we can collaborate, communicate, and exist as global citizens first, where we can solve global problems, communicate, and collaborate globally, we have to fix that language barrier in media and communication. And it has to be done in video. So I'm most excited about bringing people together, right? So people in America, in India, in China can hop on a video call, can chat about the most recent Game of Thrones episode or YouTube video that they like. And we're suddenly having some type of cultural bridges that we can communicate and connect on, right?
Yeah.
Now, to your second point, in order to make that work, the translation not only has to be accurate, it has to be more than accurate, right? Like Google Translate right now will technically accurately translate something from English to Spanish, but the accurate literal translation is not always the correct one, right? You have emotion when you say something in audio and video, and that emotion doesn't come through in text. Things like sarcasm and humor on a text-to-text based translation model just effectively just doesn't work, right? And so for us specifically, we have built and pioneered and have patented AI algorithms that take as input not just the text. Our translation takes text and audio and, when available, video, and translates that entire chunk of information into foreign languages. And so that is how we're able to get these translations out, that A, the text is more correct than just a one-to-one translation, but also the vocal synthesis has that emotion to it. So when I say something in English, that way I'm saying it is translated as well. And that also flows through to the video when it's there. So we manipulate the face, so the emotions in the Spanish, French, German output are translated in the audio and the video, as well as the text. Right?
Yeah. It's incredible to think about the sophistication of that, because, with the subtleties of sarcasm, in so many different languages, it's hard to relay that sarcasm in a way that is effective. But is there going to be a time where, whether it's DeepMedia does it or someone else, where there's kind of this efficient a generation of content, going back to my previous point about Midjourney and Chat GPT, where it's like generating content that's I guess unique and also extremely efficient. Is this going to happen with video and audio? Say if I'm Tom Cruise and I want to make a commercial in 5 different languages, can I use a company like DeepMedia essentially to push that content for me, to develop it and then distribute it? Or maybe not DeepMedia, but is there going to be a future where there's going to be an increase in an efficiency of creation of content?
Yeah, when I look at the generative AI space as it relates to content creation, I think it's important to realize that the technology being developed right now is a tool. And like any other tool, it will be used by human beings, not to replace content creation, but rather to augment content creation. If you look at something like the invention of the camera, right? Excuse me. The camera, whether it was an audio a video camera or an image-based camera, that let people capture images in near realism for the first time.
Yeah.
That didn't replace painters. Painters didn't go away. It created a new type of art form, photography, and then videography. So we're going to see, with the creation of these new tools, a new type of art form take place. It's not going to necessarily replace old types of art, but it will augment that art. What that means is that, yes, content creation will become more efficient. It will look and act and feel different, but it will still have and still require the same things that make art great, which is emotion and humanity and a story, saying something with that art, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where we're going to see content creation go in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, the challenge is generative AI is not there yet, right? If you want to create content from scratch, generative AI can't do that yet. GPT-3, GPT in general, can't write a novel, right? And so that's why DeepMedia focused on content augmentation. What synthetic media can do when applied properly and you have the right engineers, you can take a commercial in one language, clone that person's face and voice, and spit it out in 20 languages. That's something we can do today. That's something we're actively doing today with the world's largest movie studios, the United States federal government, the United Nations, and the world's biggest YouTubers. That's happening right now, right? And so over the next 2 to 5 years, we will grow and expand and develop new capabilities, new augmentations, new tools. But for right now, we're 100% focused on universal translation.
Incredible. Tell us a little bit more about the traction. You said you're working with a couple governments, some creators, some large studios. What's been exciting, not only about the growth of this year, and if you can attach numbers to it, that'd be awesome. But also for the future, what kind of partnerships are you working to develop that are going to be, even that much more successful in broadening the impact of the technology?
Yeah, this year for us was largely about that product market fit, which is often elusive. And it's one of those things where it's important to find customers that match the level of the quality that you can, contain right now. Like,
Yeah.
Especially for a company like DeepMedia, like we are on the forefront, the cutting edge of generative AI. So we're figuring out things that have never been done before. This is not a different tech company where there's a clear problem, there's a clear lack of efficiency, and you can use an AI to solve that. We are at the place, like we are inventing the car, right? We are inventing markets. This is something that has never been done. And so if you look at something like just universal translation, for example, there are markets for that already exist, dubbing, right? And movie studios have entrenched relationships with dubbing platforms, dubbing companies. And those dubbers know how to do it. They're efficient, effective. The audio comes through in 96 kilohertz, which is a hard benchmark to hit, right? And so what we did when we were trying to find product market fit, instead of saying there's this entrenched customer base that has deep relationships with large companies that have existed in the space for 50 plus years, they have massive, huge, high quality benchmarks. We tried to look at how do we approach this in an intelligent way? How do we create a market that doesn't exist, right? And that's why we began focusing on the creator economy. Last year, in 2021, I think YouTubers made something like $18 billion in revenue from the YouTube platform alone, right? And if you look at how many creators actually make more than $1 million, it's like 20 to 30,000. So there are 20 to 30,000 customers making between $500K and $1 million every single year in just their original language. Our technology benefits greatly from scale, right? It is insanely scalable. We can process hundreds of videos a week. That's something that traditional dubbers can't do, right? It is really effective in terms of price. The price to generate these dubs is, I don't want to get into specifics here, but it's at least 1/100th the cost of a traditional dubbing studio. So if we looked at what the benefits we have against our other competitors in this space, which are not AI companies, but rather human-focused dubbing studios, we saw that, again, we are much more scalable, we're much more cost-effective. But if we looked at some of the negatives to us, we don't operate in 96 audio quality, right? We're in 48K. And it's things like that. So finding the product market fit isn't always about product development. It is about taking the product and the AI you have and finding customers that can exist and live and be happy with that product right now. And so that was what 2022 was about for us, is finding that product market fit, working with customers in the creator space that allow us to refine the technology, take that refinement, and then give that to some of our studio customers who, again, we're not saying we're going to take the next Marvel movie, get it out in 50 languages. What we can do is take nature documentaries, right? Yeah. Take content that is lower level, lower quality benchmarks, something where people aren't yelling and going crazy. It's relatively standard and straightforward. It's about that, getting a product up that meets a minimum viable level of quality, and then finding customers for that product, right? Yeah. It's that combination of things that really make it work. Now, for us, 2023 is about product-led growth. It's about taking our existing product, and we're going to be on platform with 20 creators starting January 1st, which we're very, very excited about. Scaling that engagement, optimizing those channels, getting really good revenue for our creators, and then letting that sell itself, right? Developing this phenomenon where other creators see their friends, their colleagues 10x their revenue overnight by doing nothing, and then they come to us, say, hey, can you do that for me? And of course we can. And so then we scale up that engagement in a lean and way that's easy for us. It's a growth that we can handle and achieve. It's basically, instead of hiring a bunch of SDRs and salespeople, we hire a bunch of engineers, make the product kick ass, and then people come to us.
I love that. Yeah. It's obviously it's taken probably, so many hours of dedication to develop this technology, but I'm sure you're extremely excited about once it is so well developed that it does sell itself, because that's one of the biggest things for founders is getting people to adopt the technology, especially if it's something that's so new and there's so many ways to communicate the story behind it. But I'm sure once it starts, once the ball starts rolling, it's hard to stop it. What are some of the biggest risks that DeepMedia faces today?
I think our biggest risk is having too much customer interest, right? We're on the precipice of being able to completely change the world. I mean, we're talking about real-time video calls in any single language across the entire globe, right? We're talking about movies, films, radio, advertisements, corporations, in any single language automatically, instantly, right? That type of growth requires a lot of scalable management, right? And being able to scale to meet that demand is going to be our biggest challenge in 2023. It's killed companies before. Suffering from success is definitely a very real thing, and it's something I think about almost constantly. Like, that is on the top of my mind every single night as I go to bed. So it's definitely the biggest risk in my mind, but it's something I think we are very well positioned to handle.
Yeah. How do you mitigate that risk? Is it saying no to certain customers and kind of keeping a very tight a loop in the customers that you do kind of assist now? Is it focusing more and more on the technology and the product to make it really sustainable and scalable? And what in particular are your strategies to mitigate that scaling risk? Because like you said, companies have had times where they scale too fast and they implode.
Yeah, right, exactly. So for us, it's threefold. It is effective hiring. That's number one. Getting the right people on the bus is the most important thing. This means engineers, hiring engineers that are very, very high quality, that meet our culture, which is definitely hardworking, but also very empathetic to our customers and to our coworkers and colleagues, right? But it also means hiring support staff, designers, people who can manage YouTube channels, right? And people who not only know how to do that, but know how to, or at least are very excited about taking their knowledge and internalizing that with our engineers into a scalable web platform, right? So hiring's number one. And then the second, which I alluded to just then, is relying on the tech, relying on the automation, right? The most important thing for us is making sure we can deliver really high quality content to as many customers as possible. Yeah. And that is not going to come from scaling up to a 10,000 person organization. That will come from building the best world-changing AI possible, right?
Yeah.
So it's that, like those two things in combination. And then finally, like you mentioned, it's about, saying no. It's about only delivering content to people that we are very, very confident can take this content and make something with it, right? Yeah. If there's a YouTuber out there who, has extreme content where they yell a lot or cry a lot, being very honest and open with ourselves, where that type of, we cannot commit to that level of quality across all of our languages. So saying no to that and focusing on the YouTubers who are looking into the camera, making jokes, maybe they're being angry sometimes, but it's relatively normalized emotions, right? Not a lot of edge cases. Like, it's about being honest with ourselves and being committed and disciplined to sticking to product market fit and not going beyond that.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love the thought and the strategy behind that. If everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for DeepMedia?
So our goal in 2022 is to scale up in the creator economy, end the year with at least 100 creators generating between $500K and $1 million annual revenue per creator, right? By the end of 2023, we plan to develop real-time universal translation, which means that in broadcasts, sports, or in Twitch streams, or in video chats, we'll be able to have a real-time universal translator when people can speak 50 languages in their own voice with their lips synced up. Once that's live by the end of 2023, we will be scaling up across multiple revenue verticals, continuing the creator economy, but really developing and engaging in the professional film and television studios, automating dubs across the board, but then also getting into video platforming, communication platforms like this, and then scaling up universal translation across all forms of digital communications and digital media. Once that's done in 2024, 2025, and simultaneously, of course, we develop and release for free our deepfake detection to make sure that people are safe from this technology. Yeah. By 2025, the synthetic media space will have been more developed. It will be more palatable to everyday users, both in consumer and enterprise. And then we will start scaling up across different product verticals such as whatever those may be, right? That was more like generative AI content, which we talked about earlier, right? Once the technology and the space develops a little bit more.
Yeah, that's incredible. I like to ask this next question, one for my audience to research, but also for myself for selfish purposes. Whether it was early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
Good to Great is Jim Collins, one of my favorite books I've ever read. That's where the idea of getting the right people on the bus before you know where you're going comes from, right? So
Yeah.
I take a lot of my hiring strategies from that. Lean Startup, classic to me. Competing Against Luck is another big one that I've read. Those are probably the three that matter the most in terms of business. Outside of business, The Prophet is a book that I read. I also read a significant amount of religious texts, Old Testament, New Testament, Quran, Gita, Vedas. Those are things that I read on a regular basis. And then I also read a lot of, this is just a hobby of mine, but physics. So I'm very interested in quantum mechanics. And so I'll often read a lot of papers that come out with published research that people are doing.
Incredible. I love the diversity and the information you're getting. I'm sure it helps kind of create a holistic approach as a leader. And a lot of founders, have that where, they really like to entrench themselves in different types of knowledge. I think one, it's therapeutic, but two, I think it helps kind of broaden the, the different perspectives that you might have. And so amazing to hear the story and the journey and where you are. I like to ask this question. I've been troubleshooting it and I think I might keep it. If you weren't working on this, what would you be working on?
It's a really interesting question. It's hard for me to think because there's nothing else in the world I'd rather be doing than this. Like the idea, I'm a really big Star Trek fan. Like that show means the world to me. And the idea that we can take a piece of technology out of that show, like the Universal Translator, and make it real is just a dream come true for me. So if I wasn't working on this, it would be something else from Star Trek. I don't know what that is. Maybe, a teleporter or something like that.
I love that. I love that. Well, I know we're at the end of the show here, and I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours on end about different pieces of technology and different directions you can go with it. But last little bit is I like to give my guests a chance to give us your plugs, give us your LinkedIns, your website, your Twitters. Where can we be a fan and support DeepMedia and maybe even get involved if we're someone interested in developing content in different languages?
Yeah, definitely. We are DeepMedia_AI on pretty much every platform: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can email me at rijul@deepmedia.ai or just go to our website. We are very interested in anyone who wants to take their content and make it accessible to people across the globe or anyone who feels threatened by synthetic media manipulations.
Yeah.
Please reach out. We're happy to work together. In general, a lot of our business model is revenue share based, so it doesn't matter what size you are. I'm sure we'd be happy to work together.
Incredible. Well, I hope you enjoyed yourself, Rijul, and I'm excited to see the future of DeepMedia. And thank you again for joining the show.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. And thanks for doing this podcast. I think it definitely gives a really unique insight into what it's like to run a company that most people don't get. So
appreciate it.
I know as a founder, I appreciate it. And I'll be, on the lookout for other people's as well.
Incredible. Well, thank you again, Rijul. I'm excited to share this with the audience.